Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this video, a ridiculous homeowner association claimed that my barbecues are completely illegal and repeatedly called the police on me. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So I recently moved into a new neighborhood around 4 months ago. It's still under development with a lot of houses still under construction and such. About half of the houses are built there and the others aren't, but the houses on my street are. I've had my eye on one of the houses there for a while and have recently just been able to get a mortgage for one of the homes there. It is a lovely suburban house and is closer to my job, which will be useful for me. Now let me provide some much needed context for this story though. When I moved in, I was aware of the homeowner association, HOA, that existed in this neighborhood. It's still relatively new from what I've heard. Personally, I did not see the need to join an HOA even in my own neighborhood, so I did not join this one. On to more background though. It's a lot, but it's all necessary, I swear. Back at my old place, I had an established tradition to host a barbecue bi-weekly. I'm an avid meat enthusiast and I love cooking all sorts of meat like tri-tip, ribs, etc. I even got a neat smoker. I'm sure you can tell, but if you can't, I really love hosting barbecues. It's a fun way to get family and friends together and eat some amazing food. Anyway though, I re-established that tradition at my new house, starting with a celebratory housewarming barbecue. Every other week after that, I've been hosting a barbecue. The amount of people usually vary depending on schedules and whatnot, but I usually invite my parents, my brother, his wife and their 2 kids and my group of close friends. This usually makes my parties at max 12 people. The parties had not been causing problems before, at least not from anyone I've heard, but at the 5th party we were interrupted by my next door neighbor, who we will call Karen, to keep it simple. I might be biased, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily a rowdy party. We did not encroach on anyone's space or destroy property or things like that. We did drink, but only light alcohol and not to the point where we were incapacitated. The kids were also loud, you know how kids can get, but we tried to keep them under control as much as possible, even with all the running around and screaming they did. I was out back with my family, just talking, watching the meat and generally having a good time. I then faintly heard the doorbell ring but ignored it the first time, thinking it was just my imagination. Then the ringing started again and I could tell that someone was hammering the doorbell, so I went inside to check it out. It was Karen. Up until now, I'd never met her. Having never seen her around much, you guys know the evil stepmother from Cinderella? She looked like that. I greeted her and asked her what she was doing at my house. She explained that she was my next door neighbor and asked me in a very annoyed tone what was up with all the noise and commotion. I apologized to her, explaining that I was hosting a barbecue party. Karen scoffed and said, "Again?" I asked her what she meant by that, and she went on to explain that she noticed that I kept hosting these barbecues and the noise level were apparently off the charts. She even said that the guests' cars were parked terribly and prevented other people from parking their cars or getting out of their driveways. I knew that last part was definitely a lie. Since I always see my friends and family's cars parked along the curb as normal, I make sure that whenever I have these parties, I park my own car in the garage so my guests can park in my driveway, which fits about 2 cars. Any other cars are parked in front of my house, so really only 1 to 2 cars would be in front of other people's properties. And by the way, Ripe Stars, isn't it usually allowed anyways to park in front of someone's house? Especially if it's near the curb, I don't mean the driveway. Anyway, however, I understand that this can be frustrating. We've all had those neighbors who park anywhere but their own home, I'm sure, so I once again apologized and reassured Karen that I would tell my friends to find another place to park and not in front of other people's houses. However, Karen went further, telling me that I had to shut down my party because it violated the HOA's noise ordinance, adding very proudly that she was a passionate board member that would not tolerate any violation to rules. I told her that I was not a member of the HOA, so they had no jurisdiction to tell me what to do in a much nicer way than this. I did say that I would tell my family to lower the noise, even that though did not please her. She kept insisting that I had to shut down the party, to which I kept up my argument that I was not part of the HOA and therefore not bound by their rules. We went around in circles for ages until I told her that I really had to get back to the party since I didn't want my food to be burned. Karen got really red-faced and shouted that she would call the police on me if I did not shut the party down right away. I was annoyed, so I told her to go ahead, knowing that the police really would not do anything. Karen left in a huff and I returned to my friends and family. I told them about what happened with Karen, advising them to quiet down. I mentioned that she threatened to call the cops and warned them not to be surprised if the police actually showed up. As I expected, 20 minutes later, the police showed up about a disturbance. I explained my barbecue tradition to them and how I've been having parties every other week. I mentioned Karen's noise complaint and told them that I advised my family to quiet down. They then asked me about the HOA and Karen wanting to shut down the party. I explained that I was not part of the HOA, even showing them the deed to my house to prove my ownership and telling them that they could even look through the HOA records to confirm my claims. The police understood but told me to make sure that I kept the noise down. On the flip side, they also warned Karen against making false and unnecessary reports to the police, which pissed her off, much to my friends' amusement. After they left, we continued with the party with zero further disturbances, which was great. I thought it would end there, but it seems like Karen had other ideas. Ever since that day, Karen started calling the police on me for really petty stuff. For example, if my lawn is unkempt or my car is illegally parked according to her, she labeled all these calls as disturbances. Just a side note, by the way, I mow my lawn every day and I always park in my driveway, so there was no reason why she should have called the cops in the first place. Either way though, the reasons were petty and dumb, and every time I hosted a barbecue, the cops were called. Each time they were called, they found absolutely no violation of any law in existence. I could tell that the police were getting increasingly annoyed with Karen's calls, and honestly, I'm surprised that they kept on giving in to Karen and her nonsense. Because it's usually the same officers that arrive on scene, they've come to recognize me and we even started making small talk. I also offered them food for their troubles when they come during the barbecues, and I asked my neighbors if they had any problem with my barbecues. They said no, and I asked them what the deal was with this HOA and why they, not mentioning Karen, were so insistent on enforcing their laws on me. My neighbors figured out that because the neighborhood was still under development, they wanted to have control in order to minimize chaos. In my opinion, they were causing more chaos than preventing it, but whatever. Anyway, after the 7th or 8th incident with Karen, I got really fed up. I was seriously debating moving in order to avoid this trouble with Karen and the HOA, but I figured that that was an irrational choice. 1, I would be in debt for a house that I was not even staying at, and number 2, I would let Karen and her stupid HOA win. I'm a very stubborn person, by the way, so I was not about to let that happen. I decided to consult a lawyer about what to do, and he suggested that maybe there was a chance to turn the HOA against Karen instead. I agreed, and together we reviewed the HOA's bylaws. My lawyer spotted a clause about community harmony. I won't go into details for legal reasons, but the clause basically emphasizes an upkeep in community harmony and advises us to report anyone who is disrupting this so-called harmony. With this in mind, I launched my plan. I hosted my barbecue as usual, but this time it was like bait for a trap. Everything went well, but not even an hour in, as we all expected, Karen called the police on us again. The same cops showed up, clearly exasperated. They asked the required questions and I answered, and they once again advised me to lower the noise. Karen was outside surveying everything, and feeling bold, I stepped out and confronted her. I told her frankly that I was tired of her harassment and when I had done nothing wrong. I brought up all the false claims and petty calls she has made. I pointed out that she was not only inconveniencing me, but inconveniencing the local police as well. I remember saying, instead of doing what their job calls protecting citizens, they are answering your stupid calls. Karen did not care though. She scoffed, saying that I was clearly bribing the police with my food and that she would not need to call the cops if I had stopped being a nuisance. This is when I brought up the community harmony clause and told her that she was actually the one disrupting the HOA community harmony by harassing me and always bringing the cops to my door. She tried arguing that since I was not in the HOA, I would not be able to report her, which I might add is a major stroke of irony. So now you care if someone has an HOA membership or not? Anyway, I argued that she was always causing a scene, reiterating that it bothered everyone. Now I added that she was not only bothering me and the police, but also the neighbors who are HOA members as well by causing a ruckus. Finally, I finished by saying that because she was an HOA member, she most definitely could face punishment for her actions. The police, who, may I add, seemed very happy to realize they could finally get back at Karen, issued her a warning for constant harassment, false reports, and calling the police for unimportant things. They told her that if they were called for another petty reason again, they would have her arrested and charged. After that, Karen never bothered me again. Honestly though, I've stopped seeing her around and I think she's hiding from embarrassment. Surprisingly, the HOA reached out to me and apologized for her actions. They said that Karen did not represent their association and that they recognized that I was not a member and therefore were not bound by their rules. They did, however, offer me a discounted membership fee as compensation. It was crappy compensation, but I'm glad that they apologized at all. I declined though, because I didn't want to be dictated by their rules anyway. Now, without Karen bothering me, I've kept up my tradition of hosting bi-weekly barbecues and I'm going to be hosting one this weekend. I even invited the unfortunate officers who had to deal with Karen. Hopefully my ribs are good enough compensation for all the trouble. And the next one is from r/legal advice and is titled, "Can I be forced to join an HOA?" And by the way guys, if you enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to not miss any of my uploads. Thank you so much in advance. So we live in a well-established neighborhood that has never had an HOA. We bought our house about 6 years ago. Recently, the larger neighborhood in general has been having meetings about forming an HOA. Our part of the neighborhood has 7 houses and the entirety of the neighborhood has about 40 to 50 houses. The 7 of us live on our own street inside of the large neighborhood and 4 of the 7 of us are against the HOA forming. We attended a meeting recently and were among some of the homeowners who are in opposition to an HOA. From what we could tell, there were only a few people from the larger neighborhood who did not want the HOA, and we expressed that we are against an HOA forming and that we will not sign any paperwork. We will not join an HOA and we will not abide by the rules of an HOA. We were told that when the majority forms the HOA, we have to follow the HOA rules and that we will be part of the HOA whether we like it or not. We live in Georgia and have no idea who to consult about whether or not this is true. Can we be forced into a newly formed HOA? Comment number 1, something to be mindful of is a pre-existing covenant or something on your deed binding you to a theoretical HOA. I worked with a client some years ago where their neighborhood at creation had an HOA on paper that basically never existed. Later, years and years, it was successfully revived and homeowners were bound to it. I don't recall the legal details, just the outcome. Slim chance this is the case here, but just want to put it out there. Comment number 2, if there are no pre-existing deed restrictions, then the answer is no, full stop. In the meantime, don't attend any more meetings of any proposed HOA, not even if you're curious. Give these Karens and chats nothing that even smells slightly of implicit approval. And lastly, if they do form an HOA around you, congratulations, you just automatically increased your property value by about 10% because you are not in the HOA. And here, ripe stars, if you would have been in this situation, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. Now we got an update to the story that reads like this. After doing some research online, I contacted a real estate attorney in our area who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. During our consultation, she explained that in Georgia, existing homeowners cannot be forced to join a newly formed HOA without their consent. This was a huge relief, but she warned us that we needed to be prepared for some potential challenges ahead. The attorney helped us draft a formal letter to the neighborhood organizer stating our legal position and making it clear that we would not be joining any HOA. We sent copies to all the main people pushing for the HOA formation, keeping detailed records of all communication. Things got tense after that. Some neighbors stopped talking to us entirely. Others tried pressuring us by saying our property values would drop if we did not join them. A few even suggested that they would make things difficult for us if we did not get on board. We stayed firm but polite, referring anyone who tried to argue with us to our attorney. The situation came to a head at the next neighborhood meeting. The pro-HOA group had hired their own lawyer who tried to convince everyone that they could force all residents to join once they had a majority. Our attorney attended with us and calmly explained that this was incorrect under Georgia law. She cited specific legal precedents where courts had ruled that homeowners could not be compelled to join newly formed HOAs in established neighborhoods. The law is very clear on this, she stated firmly. You can form your HOA, but you cannot force existing homeowners to join. Any attempt to do so would be illegal and could result in legal action. This created quite a stir. Several other homeowners who had been reluctantly going along with the HOA plan started asking questions. It turned out many of them had only agreed because they thought they had no other choice. Once they realized that they could opt out of this, more people began reconsidering their position. The pro-HOA group tried a different approach, suggesting that they would move forward with forming the HOA anyway and basically isolating the non-participating houses. They talked about having community events that would exclude non-HOA members and even suggested they might try to block our access to some shared spaces. Our attorney advised us that any attempt to restrict our access to public areas would be illegal. She helped us document everything, including taking photos of the existing neighborhood layout and gathering historical documents about shared spaces. We decided to be proactive and reached out to our immediate neighbors on our street. The 7 of us had always gotten along well, and 4 of us were already against the HOA, so we were started to have regular cookouts and looked out for each other more intentionally. This helped strengthen our small community and made it easier to stand united against the pressure. The HOA organizers finally realized they could not force us to join. They went ahead with forming the association, but it only included the houses whose owners willingly joined. This created some interesting dynamics in the neighborhood. About 30 houses joined the HOA, while our street and a few other houses remained independent. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. The visible divide between HOA and non-HOA houses started working in our favor. People could clearly see that our properties were well maintained without HOA rules forcing us to do so. We took pride in our homes because we wanted to, not because we had to follow someone else's guidelines. Some of the HOA members started complaining about the strict rules they now had to follow. One neighbor got fined for having a basketball hoop that was the wrong color. Another had to repaint their front door because the shade of blue was not approved. These stories made more people appreciate the freedom we had maintained. A year later, 3 houses that initially joined the HOA put their homes up for sale. 2 of the buyers specifically asked about being able to opt out of the HOA, having heard about our successful resistance. Our attorney helped confirm that since these houses were only voluntarily part of the HOA, new owners could indeed choose not to join. The whole experience taught us several valuable lessons. First, standing up for your rights is crucial even when facing strong opposition, and second, it's important to know the law and get proper legal advice rather than just accepting what others claim. Finally, building good relationships with your immediate neighbors can create a strong support system. So we still live happily in our HOA-free home and the neighborhood has settled into a new normal. While there's still some tension with certain HOA members, most people have moved past the conflict. Our street has become particularly close-knit and we regularly help each other out with projects and maintenance. Our properties look great because we take pride in them, not because we are following rules set by others. The funny thing is, the HOA's attempts to force everyone to join actually ended up creating 2 distinct communities. Ours is smaller but more genuine, based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation rather than mandatory rules and fines. We have shown that you don't need an HOA to have a beautiful, well-maintained neighborhood. You just need neighbors who care about their homes and each other. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story with a full update, so please watch until the end to see the conclusion. So I, 41 female, live with my husband, 41 male, and daughters 10 and 17. My husband is a picky eater, which I've known for about 20 years. I'm used to making food and having my husband and or kids making faces, gagging, taking an hour to pick at a single serving, or just outright refusing to eat. My husband is notorious for coming home from work, taking one look at the dinner I've made, and opting for a frozen pizza. Most of the meals I make cater to their specific wants. Like, for example, spaghetti. My 10-year-old daughter only eats the plain noodles. My 17-year-old eats the noodles with a scrambled egg on top, no sauce. My husband only eats noodles with a specific brand of tomato sauce with ground beef in it. If I use any other sauce, even homemade, I'm gonna be eating leftovers for a week. So it is just one recipe of spaghetti. These days, husband complains that we have a lot of the same meals over and over. It's true, but when I've explained why that is true, it does not seem to sink in. I can only make a few things that everyone in the family will reliably eat, and those get old. A couple of nights ago, I made a shepherd's pie. I used a new recipe with seasoned ground beef, 3 out of 3 likes, peas, 2 out of 3 likes, and tomatoes, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 3 tolerate, with a turmeric smashed potato top layer. 2 out of 3 will eat mashed potato. Predictably, my 10-year-old ate a single bite and then gagged and ended up throwing hers away. My 17-year-old ate part of a single bowl and then put hers in the trash. My husband came home late and was not hungry. I was so tired of reactions to my food and putting in the effort for years, and it all finally came down on me at once. I burst into tears and cried all night and the next morning, so I told my husband that I was done cooking. From here on out, he would be responsible for evening meals. I would still do breakfast for the girls and lunch when they were not in school, but otherwise it was up to him. He said, "What about when I work late?" I told him he needed to figure it out. I told him that between him and the girls, I no longer found any joy in cooking and baking, and that I hated the way he and the girls made me feel when they reacted to my food, and that I was tired of the yuck faces and refusals to eat when I made something new, and that it broke my heart every time. This morning, he had to work, so he got up early to do some meal prep. He was clearly angry. He said he doesn't understand why I said I hated him. He said he doesn't know what to do and thinks I'm being unfair and punishing him. He said I make things that don't appeal to kids sometimes, and that I cannot expect them to like it when I make Greek-style lemon chicken soup. My 17-year-old enjoyed it, the 10-year-old and husband hated it. I countered that I make plenty of chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, grilled cheese, etc., but that picky or not, there's such a thing as respect for a person's efforts. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I feel so bad for OP in this situation. However, I would say she is also not completely innocent in this situation. I'm not saying this because maybe her cooking is bad or something. The way they react is absolutely not okay. However, I feel like she has some responsibility along with her husband for the behavior her kids display. I at least feel like if you sort of like train your kids or at least introduce them to different foods when they are super young, I don't think that most kids end up as picky as these kids. So that's why I would say that either OP or her husband or both of them are definitely responsible for this behavior as well. However, there are definitely no excuses for the husband's behavior, and especially because his behavior is so similar to the kids, he probably fueled the behavior of the kids and is mostly responsible for it. And suffice it to say, obviously the disrespect shown to OP in this story is definitely not okay. The husband must apologize, and the kids should be told why it is not okay to act in such a way. Either way, someone on Reddit said, "Not the a-hole. This was exhausting and irritating to read. I cannot imagine actually living it. I would have done this years ago, honestly, and it's not even that they are picky really, it's that they are so damn rude about it, and your husband has the audacity to complain about the lack of variety in meals. No, it's time for him to deal with feeding the picky eaters in the house, including himself." I suggest you start finding some delicious recipes for two for you to make so you can cook and eat exactly what you want with a meal left over and no worries about feeding your ungrateful family. And indeed, that sounds like a good solution. Either way, comment number 2, why are you coddling these people? The children are going to grow up to be unbearable, just like your husband. Cook whatever you want, and if they don't like it, they can be effing hungry. 100% agreed, by the way. Either way, thankfully we have an update to the story, and it reads like this. So I spoke with each family member individually about their behavior. The 10-year-old apologized profusely and said that sometimes she does not like my cooking. The 17-year-old, who has only been with us since she was 16 and did not grow up with us, it was a bit too long and off topic for the original post, said that she appreciated that I make varied recipes, even if she did not always like them. She also said that she wanted to cook but had seen husband and 10-year-old's reactions to mine and was put off it. My husband accepted the TA judgment from the subreddit, and to his credit, he planned and executed every evening meal afterwards. The kids ate his meals, but my husband's lack of finesse, overboiled vegetables, untrimmed meat, soggy pasta, caused some picked over meals from the kids. Everything was edible though, and he very politely asked for some tips on things like how long to cook rice, but I did not physically help. I reassured him that I was not trying to watch him fail, but that I needed him to learn a lesson. After a couple of weeks, both kids were tired of husband's often repeated recipes, homemade pizza, Korean beef and vegetable bowls, and nuggets and fries, and he was stressed trying to get home from work in time to get meals done. The very first night, the 10-year-old cried over her dry and gross pizza crust. My husband fought her over it, and both of them looked to me to solve the issue. I redirected the 10-year-old to husband, saying it's his call since it's his dinner. With several meals, he made way too much mediocre food and he had to eat leftovers for days, which was cathartic. Eventually, I sat down with my husband and we evaluated the fallout. Husband said it hurt when the girls didn't like his food, and it was hard to plan things ahead on nights that he worked late. He also admitted that he was in a rut for recipes and that it was hard to modify for people's preferences. There is now a posted schedule and rule that said all family members are expected to adhere to. Each kid picked a night to cook. 10-year-old has Sunday, 17-year-old has Saturday. Husband and I split the weekdays according to work schedule. Since he works late on Monday and Friday, I took those. I work Tuesday and Thursday nights, so those belong to him. Wednesday is a flex day, anyone can cook or we might go out and group projects are encouraged. The rules are no gagging, faces or complaining, cook chooses the meal period, assistance may be requested by anyone, special ingredient requests must be made a minimum of 2 days in advance. So far so good. 17-year-old has been learning a lot of technique, 10-year-old is thrilled to be addressed as chef by whoever is assisting her, and no one has yet broken any of the rules. Husband more easily asks for my advice when he is cooking, how to season, how long to cook things, which is a huge improvement. It's too early to declare victory and it takes a long time to make permanent changes, but it's encouraging progress. Thanks everyone for the advice and the support. Here is to continued positive change. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.